Kia ora and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with New Zealand artists. I'm your host, Mandy Yarkich. These conversations are intimate, uplifting and insightful. The guests on this show have absolutely enriched my life, and I'm sure their stories will have the same effect on you. Thank you so much for joining me to listen to these amazing people speak about what drives them, the way they work, and their personal takes on life. Welcome to episode 56. This week I'm talking to Josh Lancaster. Josh paints the places and buildings New Zealanders know and love. I do this by trying to capture the essence of a familiar place, says Josh. Be it someone's dairy, beach, view, flat, island, road, takeaway shop, family batch, or simply just the memory of one. These are the places we cherish, the iconic moments that make up who we are. They are an agent for fond memories, stories, feelings. Collectively, we love these places for what they remind us of. They connect us.
You know, you might have two people talking about, that time that was must have been 86 and we did and, you know, Sonia had this batch here, but didn't, and Malcolm came with the blow cart. It was and you know, and there's all this sharing, and that's right, and that person, wonder what they're up to.
In 2015, Josh made the decision to leave a highly successful career in advertising to follow his dream of being an artist, and he is now a full-time painter living in the Hawke's Bay with his three sons, Lennox, Archie and Spike. We have a great, long chat about the intricacies of a creative career in advertising, how he made the challenging shift to becoming a full-time artist, the New Zealand artists who inspire him, his connection to places, buildings, text and branding, and why he doesn't like to add people to his paintings. Hello, Josh.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Lovely to see you.
You too.
And we met a few weeks ago at your tiny show opening at Turua Gallery, which was really nice.
Yep.
And
it was a great show.
Yeah, it was a great show and very busy that night. And I was very lucky to meet your lovely three boys, Lennox, Archie and Spike.
Yep, we just arrived from Havelock North after a day in the car.
Yeah.
So yeah, they went straight to the cheese and salami and started hoovering it. But
yeah, they looked like they needed a good feed actually. But I love those names. They're the best names for boys.
They're all such great characters and all very different.
Yeah.
Same recipe, but different results.
Yeah. Oh, they're very cool. So it was lovely to meet you then. It's always nice to kind of connect before we record. So just working on Zoom now. You're in Havelock North at the moment, aren't you?
Yes, I am. This is where I live and work. I've got a little house that's next to a little stream and surrounded by trees, and it's where I do all my painting and all my gardening and all my parenting. Those are like my three things.
Sounds good. So, you know, you've had a really interesting life, and anyone who works in advertising, you know, has had a pretty full-on career, I would say, which is what you've had. And now you're a full-time artist and have been for the last 7 years, which is amazing. So can you take us through from the beginning, Josh, and tell us about your journey?
Oh, sure. Well, beginning, I've always loved drawing. And I remember my mum teaching me how to draw a cow when I was about 4. And I remember one evening she'd announced that she'd seen this ad in the paper for an anchor cow drawing competition at Pakuranga Plaza the next weekend. So each night for a week. After dinner, we'd sit down and we'd practice drawing our cows. And then weekend came and we went out to Pakuranga Plaza, and I remember just busting out my cow exactly, I was quite match fit with the cow drawing. And I think I was the youngest kid there. And I just remember listening to these big kids around me going, "Oh, what does a cow look like again?" And I'd already finished mine. And so I thought I'd spend the extra time just adding a few more teats into the udder, which I think the client liked. But yeah, I won the competition and got a little cow puppet for my efforts. And I think that was the first taste of, you can do something with this, and it's fun, and you can win stuff.
That's so good. I love that story.
But Mum's a wonderful drawer, and she's actually just started doing art classes again now.
Has she? I've actually noticed I've noticed your mum is quite sort of prolific in the comments section on your Facebook. Pauline,
yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yep.
And she's just so, so encouraging of you as her son, even though, you're an adult and everything, but she
is.
She's so cute. Yeah.
Thanks, Mum. And I think, it's funny that social media is I'm sure we'll talk about this, but it's such a great tool for an artist to be in control of their own story and to be able to share it with the people that matter to them. I often think of how hard it must have been to be an artist 50 years ago, when you had to really rely absolutely on a gallery to tell your story. And you also had to rely on people that happened to walk past that gallery and happened to like the stuff and happened to be able to afford it. Whereas now that window into your work is open 24 hours a day, and it's suggested to people that might find it interesting, which is great.
That's right. It's so different, isn't it? It's hard to imagine how artists actually ever manage to sell work now.
Well, yeah. Well, a lot of them didn't back then, and that's something that I'm always encouraged about when I, read about Vincent van Gogh selling his first work 4 months before he died. A whole life of creative endeavor that we all get to sort of marvel in and appreciate now, but he never got anything from it.
And I guess in those days it was really only dead artists who became famous.
Yeah, so, I think it still is.
Yeah, probably.
It's still the best way to make any money out of being an artist, I think.
Dying.
Yeah. Although there's, recently you might have seen there's been a law adopted here, which will mean that artists receive a 5% royalty indefinitely on resale of their work, which is great.
Amazing. Yeah,
it's something that I think has always been missing from the visual arts. Anyway,
it's amazing, and they obviously do that in other countries, but I just can't imagine admin-wise how that would work.
Well, yeah, I'm glad that's not my problem.
No, exactly. Anyway, let's not worry about that. So going back to your childhood, Josh, I mean, you had that encouraging mum, which is amazing. And, how did you kind of go through high school, and what were you sort of thinking and what were you creating at that time?
Well, through school, I think I was always very much into art. Any sort of school project seemed to have a disproportionate amount of time spent on the title page and the typeface. And I think that definitely through primary school, if it was ever a project we had to team up and you needed a picture, I think I was quite popular, but not so much if it was anything to do with maths or science. I'd be last guy picked for sure. But yeah, loved drawing, loved art. I went to Auckland Grammar for secondary school, and my art teacher was Justin Burrows, the Auckland realist painter, and he was great to learn from. I definitely, probably by maybe 15 or 16, I'd really felt like my destiny was art school. It's just completely committed to, painting, anything to do with creativity. Unfortunately, at grammar, the option lines meant you could take only one free writer subject, of which there was also design and photography, and PE was in there as well. But, largely I think that grammar's philosophy was based around, core traditional subjects,
academics,
which I think I can really appreciate now. I didn't really feel like I had much time for maths growing up, but certainly as an artist now, the absoluteness of maths, of things being either right or wrong, and there's only one right answer, perhaps different ways to get there, but there's only one right answer, so there's no arguing. Whereas painting and creativity is such a colourful spectrum of grey, but nothing's ever absolutely wrong and nothing's ever absolutely right, and there's so many different right ways that you can go. So
yeah,
I think the more time you spend in the murky grey, the more you appreciate the pursuit of absolutes.
Yeah, sometimes feels simpler, I guess, doesn't it? Yeah.
So for my final year at school, I moved to senior college in town just for my last year, and that was great because I could take painting, and I could take design, and I could take PE as well.
That's brilliant.
No one was questioning the option lineup, and I think that's when school, and particularly then tertiary education, starts getting exciting, because you can build it around you in a relevant way, the things that you're interested in, not just the same old maths, English, science, and variants of that. So that was great. That was just a year at a different school, and I was able to just put my head down and do what I needed to do to get into art school. That was my plan. And but I had a painting teacher, Ken Adams, who was good enough to take me aside and go, "Josh, I know you want to go to art school, but to be honest, I don't think anyone wants to buy paintings from a spotty 18-year-old. And I remember thinking, that's my plan. That's the dream.
Gosh, that's a funny thing to say to a student in a way, isn't it?
Well, it led on to, he didn't just say that and that was it. He said, have you considered going to design school? Because I just think it would just be the way you think. You'd be great at design school. And also you end up with a job that pays money and stuff. I think he was doing the responsible thing of encouraging me with what I had to go into an industry that was going to reward that. Yeah. Whereas it might have been harsh what he said, but I think it was also quite true.
And were you at that point, sorry to interrupt your flow, but were you at that point sort of showing signs of being that ideas guy that you need to be in advertising, do you think? Is that what he was seeing?
I think quite possibly. Teachers have the benefit of knowing, I guess, what character attributes lend themselves best to certain situations when the student themselves don't know, they're just being them. But I think that advertising was a good fit for my creativity. I didn't know advertising was going to be the destination then. And anyway, I applied to design school and got in.
In Auckland?
In Wellington.
Okay.
So I moved down there, and that in itself was just a really, not just design school, but moving out of home to go and live in a different city that I'd never been to before until the day I turned up, a week before my classes started. And I'd applied for all these halls of residency, but I'd applied to the wrong ones. I'd applied to Vic hostels rather than Wellington Polytech hostels, which was where the design school was.
Yeah. So
I ended up staying in this halfway house for the first sort of 6 weeks. That it was disgusting, and not the dream start to student life that I was anticipating, but really motivating. And that it's like, this is not where I want to be. This is not how I want to be living. So very soon after that, I went flatting with some people that I'd met, and that was just such a great independent adventure. And I think the time that you start sort of discovering who you really are and what you really want to do, and when there's no one there, parental, saying you should be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that, you've really got to listen to yourself and what you want to be doing and where you want to be going. And I think that's when things perhaps started happening for me.
Yeah.
So design school was great. It was 4 years down in Wellington, and it really did give me everything that I was after. The papers that I was taking each day were everything from drawing to life drawing to computer graphics and animation and typography. It was great. It sort of fulfilled all the things that I wanted. And there's plenty of art history and design history papers, and I was just a sponge for it all, and loved it. And then I started taking advertising papers, and I think I'd always been allured by advertising. I remember the walls of my room growing up were pasted with ads, big glossy ads that I just loved the thing that they were selling, or the way they were selling it, or the whatever,
the branding.
And I was just a sucker for it. And so I think where there'd probably been my mates might have had loaded or FHM calendars, mine were all just ads for shoes, or
really?
album covers, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I used to I remember at high school, trying to make my own magazines, and there was definitely an intent and a drive towards there, but I just didn't know what it was at the time. But I was probably going through the early stages of advertising art direction, I suppose,
and working out what you loved. And, yeah.
And so probably halfway through design school, there was a moment where I met my creative partner, Jamie Hitchcock, and Jamie had already done a degree, and he'd gone traveling and had an epiphany in the Middle East that he needed to get into advertising. So he came back to New Zealand, got into advertising, and we sort of found ourselves in the same advertising class. And I remember seeing him present something to the class, and I just thought he just knew how to talk and knew how to sell what he'd done. And I loved it. And so we started working together, and advertising, the creative side of advertising relies on a creative team. So you have an art director and a copywriter. Traditionally, one person's responsible for the words, the other person's responsible for drawing a scamp and the photography and the type. So, but really, the strength of the creative team is in having someone that you can bounce ideas off, someone that understands you, that you have a chemistry, a creative chemistry that works together. And in that case, the sum of all parts is much greater than just two people who like doing ads. So Jamie and I were working together at design school, and then ended up getting a job for a big agency in Wellington called Clemenger. And that was one of the things that I loved about working with Jamie is that we were both motivated to get jobs. You know, we weren't just down at design school to have a good time. We really wanted a life beyond that. It was a means to an end. And so we started setting goals together quite early on in advertising. We wanted to have a job as soon as we'd finished. And, you know, we sort of pushed ourselves both in our individual pursuits at design school, and got this job, and the goal setting sort of continued. And I know it sounds a little bit nerdy, but we sat down, and everything used to happen over coffee and cigarettes in a cafe in the morning. That's pretty much how it worked.
Yeah, very, very Wellington.
Yeah, and and I remember we got out a pad and we wrote down our goals as a team, and they were to, I remember them. One was to get our first TV campaign away that year. We also wanted to be the most awarded team at work, and we wanted to make ourselves so indispensable to the agency that we weren't going to get fired when the agency lost a client.
Yeah, isn't it amazing at that young age? How old were you then?
Well, I was probably 21, 22.
Amazing.
Jamie's a bit older than me. Jamie's 8 years older. So he brought a whole lot of maturity to the equation that I wasn't necessarily offering
That's
up.
quite good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is great, I think, in a creative team to have people that, you know, you can connect and understand each other, but you also have different life experiences, so you've got a larger pool collectively to be drawing upon as a resource for your ideas.
And you still had that sort of young, gorgeous naivety that you brought to the team, which is also good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I kept Jamie in touch with what the kids were up to. Yeah. So we set those goals, and it's a funny thing with goals, but when you commit them to paper, that's the hardest bit. Once you've actually decided what your goal is, then the rest of it's quite clear and straightforward. So we went about that and ticked off all our goals, and I'm like, right, what's next? And that seemed to work really well.
And you were working within a company at that time?
Yeah, so agencies hire creative teams usually. So you get hired as a team and you get fired as a team usually. And yeah, we both, advertising had always just sort of, there was a real allure to it. It always seemed to be full of cool people doing cool things, and the walls of the agency were always surrounded, always filled with great pieces of art, and there was always a real vibe when you walked into Saatchi's or into Clemenger, and it was a place that we wanted to be. It was just really exciting, but it was also a different time, and our day usually involved turning up at work at about 8 or 8:30 and really getting stuck in all morning. And then you'd find yourself out at lunch. Someone would take you out to lunch. Often film companies would take creative teams out to lunch as a way of getting to know them. And we were very happy to go along with that. And so you'd have these wonderful lunches at places that we certainly couldn't afford to go to if we were paying for it. And then you weren't really expected to be back in the agency if you'd been drinking. It was sort of like a rule, right? If you're not fit to come back to work, just don't come. We'll just see you tomorrow. And so you'd have a great afternoon with really clever people telling cool stories. Often, inadvertently, you'd be solving creative problems along the way, just through the course of conversation and talking to people. And then you'd sort of go home and hang out with your flatmates or your family, and come to work and do it all again the next morning. But there was very clear light and shade as to when you're working and when you weren't.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the old Nokia phones that we had back then could text. And that was great. There's only so much you can get someone to do in a brief if you're texting them.
Yeah.
Whereas
it's quite a different world, isn't it? Before, all the emails and
yeah. And so it's a wonderful tool, but the technology is a wonderful tool. But advertising, I think, for us perhaps worked better when there was that light and shade, and you left the agency and that was it for the day. And you felt like you were paid a lot of money, you were looked after, you were given space to work, and that you didn't want to take advantage of that. So you always made sure that you came up with the goods. There was still a lot of expectation. And yeah, it has changed. I think that once laptops started coming home, and then once phones started being able to not just be able to brief you, but you could also actually do the work and send it back from your mobile, it is a lot harder to escape the work. And yeah, that's probably something that I struggled with personally, towards the end of my advertising years, is that there just wasn't an escape from it. And I think creative people do need, I think they have a lot to give, but you just can't expect them to be on red line the whole time. You need to turn the car off.
Did you feel like that sort of affected the way your brain worked and your sort of creative ideas when you were just going all the time without that headspace?
I don't think it affected my creativity. I think, it's funny, you sort of learn to use this tool that you're born with and what it can do and what you can get out of it and how to get it to do the things that you want when it's not in the mood. It's a tricky thing. But you learn to get the best out of it. What I found, and it's a really weird thing. It's a really weird personal thing. But I think that what ended up happening is that what I needed to do to get the work done, often, if there wasn't enough time or if there wasn't enough motivation, is I'd find myself the psyching up that you need to do to, right, we've just got to smash this, we've just got to get through it. Okay, this is what's going to get done in the next hour. This is what we've got to do today. I think, although consciously, I think I was able to handle it. I think that it had weird health implications for me, and that your body doesn't like being thrown into this sort of flight or fight scenario just to get work done. It's a really effective way to get shit done. But I think what ended up happening with me is the products that I was working on after a certain amount of time started, I'd think about them, and often they were food products, and I'd literally get sweaty, just the thought of that product or that ingredient. And I think it was probably my body saying, this is poisonous, this is toxic.
Wow.
And I just thought, I must be allergic to an ingredient in this product. And then finding this weird situation where it's like, how can I be allergic to every single product that we sell?
That's
And I was
really
like,
fascinating.
is there an additive in here? And particularly, anything to do with oranges or lemons, I'd struggle with. And I'd be trying to draw these scamps, on an A3 piece of paper. And I ended up having to get sweatbands so that I could, and I used to get pissed off because it'd be like
Really?
sweat dropping on the page and it's wrinkling the paper. And it's like,
Oh my
but it
gosh.
happened so slowly that it was like normal. And it
That's
was,
really interesting. Do you think
um,
it was like a trigger? Something was triggering you sort of
I think
psychologically.
I think that in all the connections and the wiring and the associations, I think that you build and develop, which makes people good at what they do. Certainly advertising creatives good at what they do. I think that you can also build negative associations and so forth. And I think that that's what was happening in the background. I was probably thinking that it was work related or product related or whatever. But I think at the same time, I was a young dad with 3 young children. And I was also chasing this or pursuing more seriously this hobby that had turned into potentially my next career. A dream of being an artist, not just selling chips and beer and chocky bickies. And I think that it was all the pressures of that. And that was sort of probably perhaps the real reason why this was happening at work was that I'd found what I really wanted to be doing in life. And it was just there. It was just over there. But I think the hardest bit was the overlap between being an advertising creative and with the expectations on you. And also the role as a husband and a father, and that I wanted to go and be a painter. I wanted to be an artist, but it didn't feel like it was a responsible thing for the key breadwinner at home to be doing, and that sort of, it's funny, but that sort of changed a bit now, in that I think the worst thing you could do as a dad is just to keep doing the job that's not making you happy anymore. When everyone knows what your dream is. And I think there's certainly a sense of pride in paying the bills and feeding the family while doing the thing that you've always dreamt of doing.
Yeah. And it's it must be hard. I suppose it adds extra pressure in some ways when you're actually doing so well in your career and you're earning a lot of money. And so it almost seems like more of a sort of jump down to doing something that initially might not be earning much money at all.
Maybe not earning any money, and maybe won't go anywhere.
That leap of going from a sort of such a great career. And, let's face it, you were very well thought of in that industry, and you actually won the New Zealand Young Creative of the Year in 2005. So, you're probably being very modest. You had a very successful career. And so going from that kind of, of job where you were sort of seen as somebody who was the happening guy and knew what you were doing, and everyone respected you and admired you, and then suddenly sort of taking that leap to doing something that might not be successful.
We advertising was a lot of fun, and Jamie and I think were quite good at what we did. we had I guess over the years developed a sort of niche as the creative team that you'd go to if you were selling New Zealand or something New Zealand. We seemed to be able to peddle a tone that could connect with New Zealanders. And I guess that's what we sort of became known for.
And did you actually end up with your own company, or were you still working as a team within other agencies?
No, we were always with other agencies, big agencies, but I guess we always had a dream of doing our own thing. And so in about, I think, 2007, we left Colenso in Auckland, where we'd had a great few years and won lots of awards, which are really important to advertising agencies.
Which must add to the pressure.
Yeah, well, they're great to win, and then you've got to back it up the next year and the next year. Otherwise, it's just a one-off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you do make a little bit of a rod for your own back, so to speak. And so advertising was all about the awards for us early on, and we were told as junior creatives that we just needed to be selfish about that's what agencies wanted from us, just to win a whole lot of awards, and that was our job, and we set about doing it. But more and more we ended up also becoming a safe pair of hands for the larger clients or the trickier clients or maybe the less glamorous clients, and we took real pride on using our creativity to solve their business problems rather than just using our creativity to solve our lack of awards problems. And then went off and set up our own agency, and it was called Josh and Jamie, and we had this dirty little concrete bunker in Grey Lynn with no windows that was underneath a block of flats that whenever anyone flushed the toilet, we heard it all, and we could hear it moving along the pipes above us. And when we first moved into space, it's like, oh, look at these industrial cool pipes. We just didn't know that there was just the half of Grey Lynn's sewage overhead.
Oh, that's so funny.
But we loved doing our own thing, and again, that was that's where the goals sort of came about, and it's like, right, this is what we've got to do, and this is how many clients we've got to pick up in the next few months, and this is what it's going to be about. And we had a furious start and picked up some great clients, and our first shoot as the new agency, Josh and Jamie, was a round the world trip that we'd unsuccessfully tried to write for years, and then we found ourselves shooting in the States and India and Dubai, and yeah, it was amazing.
Wow. Sounds amazing.
But then it wasn't the plan, but after about 6 months, we were approached by another agency who just really wanted us to come and work with them. And so they bought Josh and Jamie, and we joined an agency called Assignment that we'd always admired. And what we admired about them was that they never entered awards, they never spoke to the press, and they didn't pitch for business, all of which were quite big, interesting things. It's like, how can you survive as an agency without pitching and without the awards? And how will anyone sort of know if you're any good if you can't tell them how many awards you've won? But we loved the guys that ran Assignment. We'd always admired them and loved the work that they did, and the way that they rolled. And so we joined them and stopped talking to the media and stopped entering awards, two things that we thought we were quite good at. But it really just use our creativity to directly solve clients' problems, the things that keeping them up at night. And so there was a real sense of satisfaction and feeling like we were actually using our forces for good.
And did that take some pressure off, do you think? I mean, was that slightly less stressful?
Yeah, it was, and that you weren't serving two masters. You weren't promising the client you were going to, sell more dog food or whatever, and promising the creative director that you were going to win a gold lion. It's really hard to do both. Some ads can, but most ads are either down and dirty doing a job or real wacky and creative winning awards. Very few sit in that little bit in the middle. So that was really different for us. But yeah, I think the hard bit about leaving advertising was wouldn't have just been leaving advertising, but it would have also been leaving my creative partner, who I've been working with for the best part of 20 years. So I think that probably the hardest thing for me about leaving advertising, it would have been a whole lot easier just breaking up with advertising. But I had a relationship with Jamie that had, 20 years in the making.
Yeah, that's such a long time, isn't it? And it's probably a long time in advertising circles.
Yeah, it is, I think. And that was all we'd ever known, was just working with each other. Lots of sort of creatives, have different partners and try different people, but we always just had each other. So it was hard, and I didn't want to ever leave him in the lurch as well. But essentially, that's what had to happen for me to go and pursue my own thing.
And what was the catalyst with that? I mean, was it partly the stress that you were experiencing? Did you kind of acknowledge that at that time, or was it just that sort of yearning to be painting?
Well, I think I'd probably been painting for about 5 years at this point, painting seriously. And I remember when I started painting, and it was, after a day of talking at work, what I loved doing was, after the house was all tidy at night, turning on the PlayStation and just escaping into a game. And I think I'd always done that. I remember buying a PlayStation when I was at design school, and that was sort of like my go-to way to get out of my headspace of solving problems or whatever. So I used to play PlayStation. That was my escape. And then I had this realization one night that you finish a game and there's nothing to show for it. It's the 100 hours that you can't really reconcile. And there was sort of something uncomfortable in me in that I had this dream of being an artist, but I was also telling myself that that's what I'd do when I retired, or that's what I'd do when I got kicked out of advertising, or I just don't have the time at the moment. But I did have the time. I just wasn't using it. I was using it on something else. So I stopped playing PlayStation and started painting pictures in my back shed. And I found it a whole lot more rewarding because I was getting the same result, and that I'm thinking about something that's completely unrelated to my daytime problems.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, I had something to show for myself. And also there seemed to be an appetite for people who wanted to take that thing off my hands and give me money for it.
Yeah.
Which was like, I wasn't getting paid playing PlayStation.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was cool. And at first I just started doing it for myself. But I set up a page on this new app called Facebook. And I just I'd just post a picture of what I'd done.
And you're still working in your advertising at that time.
Yeah. And so it was sort of the thing at night that I did to for balance, I guess. But as it sort of took on a life of its own and snowballed, and the commission list grew, and I was getting approached by various dealers that were after pieces for an exhibition, and there was tension, and I just didn't have the time in my day to be doing it. I only had hobby time of like maybe half an hour a night. So yeah, it was that overlap was hard. It was hard on me. It was hard on my wife. It was a really difficult time, and it's great being able to be on the other side of it and be able to paint all day as my job and not have any other commercial distractions.
Yeah.
It's just it's just the trauma that happens in between trying to go from there to here. And I don't think that I would have had the confidence or perhaps the stupidity to just throw in my job one day and go, actually, I want to be an artist and I'm going to start today. I don't want to do my other job. And I don't think that would have worked. But yeah, you can't sort of change the way that you've done things.
Yeah. So was there some sort of fallout from you sort of being so busy in your daytime career and then really focused on your art at nighttime? Was that a strain for you and your wife and your kids?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think so much for the kids, in that the advertising day would Jamie and I would always try and be back home by like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'd have some great time with the kids, good family time then. But it just became expected as routine that the workday then kicks off again about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And then painting would sort of be the last thing that I'd do. But yeah, often it was sort of the maybe 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock time. And I'm creatively, that's at night is when I've always been at my best, whether that's coming up with ideas for things or whether I'm painting. And, that just has I guess that just the pursuit of that there's sort of sacrifices, and there's particularly, I think, as an artist, when I'm in artist mode, which is very different to when I'm parental. When I'm parental, it's all about routine and this needs to happen at this point, and drop-offs here, lunches, laundry, everything needs to be done in a particular order, and there's not a lot of movement. Whereas when I'm in painting mode, it's I feel like I'm a lot more true to myself, in that if I'm hungry, I stop and eat. If I want to go for a walk, I go for a walk. And if I want to paint, I paint. And you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. And I also think that it's been a really great exercise, and probably for the first time in my life, that you're able to listen to what your body's telling you, and you can hear it really clearly when it's up to you as to what we're doing next. If you're hungry, if you're tired, if you're grumpy, if you just need sleep, if you need food, and really clearly if you need to paint.
Yeah.
And I think the tension point for me as an artist is in relating to other people and to friends, to partners, that often their routine is the flip side of mine, where I work at night and during the day, it's like, that's the time to go for walks or go to the beach or do some gardening. Who's up for that, guys? Silence. We've all got proper jobs.
Yeah.
And likewise, the when you've got when you are feeling the need to paint, it's torturous when you've committed to something, or you're out at dinner and lovely company, lovely food, but there's this little fire inside you going, you've got to be you're in the zone, you've got to be in the studio painting.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is you can try and create time to paint and block out time to paint, and you might have the time, but you just might not be feeling it. So there's all sorts of little tricks that you have to play. Sometimes it's the pep talk and come on, look, we've just got to get this done. You've got to do this. This is what you're going to achieve today. And other times being gentle on yourself and going, right, you've got to do something else right now.
Yeah.
Just go and get some input rather than some output.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we need to talk about exactly what your practice is all about, but, it's just so interesting hearing what you have to say, Josh. I'm sure there'll be so many artists out there who are just, really benefiting from your sort of reflections and your experiences. Yeah, it is kind of leaping forward, but, how do you find that sort of contrast between you often working alone and motivating yourself and disciplining yourself, and then compared to your career in advertising, which would have been so much a part of a team and, you're especially with you and Jamie kind of driving forward together. It must be quite a sort of a different environment for you.
It is. And I like my own company, so it's not, it's not as torturous as it would be for some people. I find I'm really effective in a solo mode. I can just get stuff done. But very different to advertising in that one of the things that I miss the most about advertising is the people, and being able to turn up somewhere in the morning each day and all your friends there. It's like Cheers,
Yeah.
And you turn up and everyone's got a cool news story or a place that they've been or a movie that they've watched, or you've got to check out this app, or it's a real fast track to a curated smorgasbord of all the cool, interesting, exciting things happening in life, especially as someone, as a dad of young kids that's also spending a lot of time in the studio by himself. This is sort of great stimulus. And so I'd love turning up in the morning and we'd all make a coffee together and have a chat before we independently get into our work days. And that's the bit that I do really miss. Certainly in my line of work now, it's just me. And so I have to be the all those roles in an agency in one, and that's not just the painter or the artist, but I've also got to find part of me that can do the admin and not just paint the pictures, but also write about the pictures, or and then hustle my own work and be active on social media. There's all these other roles beyond just being the guy painting the pictures.
The painter, and making all the creative connections and that kind of thing with other people, and with galleries,
which are all great. But they all do take away from the core task of painting a picture.
And that, I think all artists struggle with that, don't they? I mean, it's just, there's so much more work to being an artist than just actually doing the craft.
Yeah, totally.
Which can be so hard. So, I mean, gosh, it's already been an hour, I think, that we've been talking, and we haven't started talking about your painting, but it's such an interesting story. And it's still, you've had such a creative career that I think it's all the things that you've talked about so far is sort of really, interesting for the audience
Yeah.
because, it's still that kind of creative buzz that you were on that you kind of then shifted to another gear, I guess, and creativity. Yeah.
And I feel very lucky to have had that time in advertising because it's certainly helped me in terms of being able to sell my own work.
Yeah.
I think that it's a tricky one for New Zealanders selling themselves because we don't like it when somebody tells us, hey, look at this cool thing that I've just done, or, aren't I clever? We don't like that. We don't like that at all.
No, it's funny, isn't it? We're quite uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. And
Strangely.
so it is hard when my career and my revenue is directly linked to being able to sell that piece of work or talk up that piece of work or get that piece of work in front of the right people. But also it's me that has to talk about it. So it's a weird one where sometimes you can talk in third person, but that's a little bit odd. So I think I've figured out a way to do it that doesn't sort of perhaps rub people up the wrong way.
Yeah, you definitely have. And those skills, I mean, have really sort of put you in a good position, I guess, for your career as an artist. You can probably talk the talk and come across in a sort of genuine, authentic way, which is a good thing.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
So let's just jump into your actual painting and your art practice.
Yeah.
So I'm sure everybody listening has seen your amazing work, but can you give us a little description of your paintings and the kind of things that you like to paint, and then we can start talking about your process.
Sure. So I paint, and I've always painted large landscapes in acrylic. I like big canvases because they feel like windows, and I like it when you can stand in front of painting and feel like you're looking at a view rather than looking at a picture of a view. So scale is quite important. The landscapes never have people in them. When the scene's absent of people, I think it is accessible to even more people. It's a blank stage for them to populate with their own memories, and that's not at the expense of somebody right next to them doing the same thing. Whereas if a landscape has a little girl running through it, that's about her story and her relationship with that place, not about mine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So and that's what I get really excited about with sharing a painting. Is I'm not after somebody standing in front of the painting and complimenting the detail or the use of color or anything like that. It's when a conversation is sparked, where memories are shared with another person, and you might have two people talking about, that time that was it must have been 86 and we did and Sonia had this batch here but didn't, and Malcolm came with the blow cart. It was and and there's all this sharing, and that's right, and that person, wonder what they're up to. And I think if the piece can stimulate those stories and anecdotes and memories and connections with other people, that for me is like what I feel really good about a piece of work.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately what I'm after. Is half my work is commission based, and it gives me a real sense of satisfaction of being able to hand a piece over to someone that clearly tells their story and their story that's important to their family and their kids and future generations.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's quite incredible, isn't it, to have half your practice devoted to commissions?
It's probably a little bit more than that. There's always been a big to-do list of commissions.
Wow, which is a good position to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. But also, as a pleaser, I'm uncomfortable with telling people that it's going to be 18 months before they've got a painting.
You just got to let that go, probably.
Yeah, but that is
what it is.
That is what it is, and I think, unlike advertising, deadlines were deadlines, and as an artist, I often hear, are you sure that's enough time? We just want you to be happy with it before you let it go. So no one ever said that to me in advertising.
Yeah, it's quite different.
And they don't haggle about the money. I don't think anyone tries to negotiate like they would on the cost of a television commercial or the or the monthly retainer in advertising.
Yeah, that's so true.
So I do feel in a way that weirdly there's more respect offered to the artist than the hardworking creative director.
That's
even
really
though it's still the same brain, same person.
Yeah. That's a very interesting, idea, though, isn't it? It's great that artists are being respected in that way.
Yeah, and I think, but I also think that people have a perception of what life as an artist is like, and I think that they think that there's maybe a lot of swanning around and being influenced and stimulated by things, and going for walks in the rain or just whatever. But it's not. It's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of when stuff doesn't work out, that's a week gone. That's right. That you're not getting back.
Yeah, and you're not really getting paid for your time as such.
No, and there's lots of things that you don't get paid for as an artist, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing. Some things you just get paid for in exposure or perhaps positive PR rather than money.
Yeah, you've got to look at the big picture, I guess, sometimes. But, it can be hard, and you can't necessarily put your price up for the end product to cover that. So, there's sometimes a bit of a, it sometimes doesn't quite work out.
No, but there's also this, even when I sell a print, and the prints are great in that it just makes each of the originals just work a little bit harder. I still never do more than 20 prints of any one thing. I like the idea that it's still a limited edition.
Yeah.
But those prints, when someone hangs a print in their house, it's a great ad for Josh Lancaster Paintings Limited.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's wonderful media, and so every piece that you do is out there working quietly for you in people's homes.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And prints are so beautiful these days with all the amazing inks and photography and scanning, and it's can be enjoyed like an original visually.
Oh, we're so lucky as artists to have all those tools at our fingertips. The phone and our camera is, just the bit for a landscape painter to be able to just stop at any point in my day and go, that would make a great painting.
Yeah.
Or I love the way the light's hitting that. Or I'd never realized how much I loved this thing before or this view before. And so and my process involves working in the comfort of my studio with Radio New Zealand blaring. I'm totally comfortable, 22 degrees. I'm not standing in a field catching bits of paper as they blow away in the wind. I can't think of how difficult that would have been to be an artist then. Whereas to be able to just zoom in on any reference shot and go, oh, that's how that works. Or, yeah, we're super lucky.
Yeah, we do have a few of those extra conveniences compared to the old masters, I guess.
Yeah.
So just, back to your practice, how would you describe your paintings? I mean, obviously you've spoken about that you paint landscapes and that kind of thing, places, and obviously buildings and homes and dairies and, lots of other sort of things that you would see in the environment.
Yeah.
How would you describe your painting techniques?
I think so. There's two things. There's probably the theme to my work and the technique that I apply. I remember coming across a phrase a little while ago that described somebody's writing, and it talked about the geography of the heart. And it just really stuck with me as a phrase of these landscapes that we attach so many memories and associations with, and that tell a story of who we are and where we're from. And so those are the things that I love to explore. And even though all these places are usually, it's a cafe that's owned by somebody and it's their cafe, if you're someone that loves going to that cafe and it's part of your life and it's what you do with your partner on Thursday mornings or and you sit it, and that becomes your table at your cafe, and this is how you like your coffee. People love having a representation of that part of their life.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of thing also, the actual place, it's not only reminding them of the place, but, what's been happening at the time that they were there and, all those other emotional things.
Yeah, yeah. And so I love taking on a landscape or a scene that I'm familiar with and that I've got stories about. And where that's not possible, I really rely on other people's stories. So with commissions, a well-written brief about why this place is so significant to them, or what those stories are, really, really helps me make the painting happen. In terms of how they actually look and the technique, I like trying to capture an idealized take on that, something that sort of maybe transcends time of day or season. And when we think of these places in our mind's eye, what it looks like, that's almost the scene that I'm trying to capture, is how you remember it. And how you remember a place doesn't always have all the detail that's in there. And sometimes the detail that's in there is amplified and certain things are dialed up or dialed back. But the getting into the headspace of that particular place, what it sounds like, what it smells like, all those sort of experiences, sensory things of being there, standing on the footpath outside that restaurant, or sitting underneath a pine tree in summer, and you can smell and feel the pine needles, and you can hear the cicadas, and you can hear the sound of the waves crashing, and maybe a little bit of the tannoy from the surf club. That all these things sort of really help get me in the zone for just making the painting visually come alive.
Yeah. And your painting, I mean, would you say it's kind of a flat use of color, or, I mean, it's not really painterly, is it? How would you describe it?
Well, I get asked this a bit, but I've always just painted the same way, right? So it's how I see things in my head, or how I remember things in my head. I think it's definitely influenced by, particularly growing up, I think, by comics and cartoons. Certainly, a diet of American cartoons, lots of sort of Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes, Disney stuff. And I always sort of just found myself really admiring what was happening in the background in those plates. It wasn't what, Mickey and Pluto were doing in the foreground, but it's like, the blue color that they've used on those hills, or how they managed to get that, and there was, I think there was something about those background plates as well that were often, and advertising art, where it was very gestural. Obviously they had to do thousands of these plates, so can't spend too much time. But there's something beautiful about the simplicity of telling a story as simply as you possibly can in a way that connects with people. And so that's what I've always admired in other people's work. How they've simplified it down to the essence of what that place is, so that it almost works in the same way that, just as our phones could read a QR code, our eyes see a scene. It's like bang, you're there, and you're hearing those sounds and smelling those sounds straight away. You're there before you've even thought about it.
Yeah, and it's definitely, they're obviously very realistic, because you can absolutely tell where the place is. But then it hasn't got that sort of photorealism, hyperrealism thing going on in the same ways, but it's definitely not abstract. So it's an interesting kind of blend, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is. And it's, but it's also been influenced by a bunch of different people, I think. For as long as I can remember, whether it was painting or doing anything, just watching the way somebody does it that knows what they're doing, and taking some tips from them, whether that's just even somebody mowing a lawn, going, oh, all right, I see how you did that. Oh, yeah. Only empty the catcher that often. Oh, yeah. But you might just take something different from every lawn mowing person that you see in life, and you build up your own style.
Absolutely. And do you think that you are more sort of open to that kind of learning because you didn't do the fine arts degree?
You know what? I think that my advertising background and design background, I think, has been really good for me, in that I don't know which came first, whether this supports my feeling about art or the other way around. But I remember one of our first jobs in advertising, and the way that advertising would work is that, as a junior creative, you come up with a bunch of ideas and show it to your creative director, and they basically say good or shit, and that's their job. And then they go back to lunch and you go back to work. But I remember there was a great boss, our first boss in Wellington, this guy Duster, and Jamie and I had come up with this idea, this drink driving billboard, or it was a poster at a bus stop that we thought was just brilliant, the best thing anyone had ever come up with. And we were trying to convince our creative director just how clever our idea was. And he would just look blankly at us, and we just kept talking. And at the end of it, he said, so can I get this right? You guys are going to sit at the bus stop and tell this story to everyone that comes past? I was like, perhaps the piece does need to just work on its own.
Yeah.
and I think that that's what I like about, art's wonderful. It's so subjective. There's room for everyone and everything. But the pieces that I like are ones that work on their own, that can do a job, make someone feel something without you going and telling them what they should be feeling right now, or what the artist was feeling right now. And so I've always had a love-hate with title notes next to a work, because I love seeing new work in galleries. I love seeing what people have produced and all the different directions they're going in. But I hate reading the explanation about the work, because so often I read it and go, oh, that's not what I felt. Or
Yeah. You're kind of
did,
directing the viewer.
was the artist really exploring that, or were they just going about making a painting? So yeah, that's the point where I love all art up to the point that I think that it just starts getting a little bit too arty.
Yeah, I know
If
what
you
you
know what I
mean.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think that within the spectrum of art, you've also got people that are doing things that have never been done before, exploring things that have never been done before, and that's great. But my success as an artist involves creating pieces that people are going to want to hang in their homes, that are going to tell their story, and they've got to be kind of pretty and happy and look good.
Yeah.
So I think that that's what I sort of know, that that's what side of the whole art world that I sit on. It's definitely the one that's based around trying to sell paintings and make a living out of it, rather than just being tortured and famous.
Yeah. And intellectual.
Yeah.
That sounds
Intellectual is good. Just up to the point.
Nothing wrong with intellectual, but that's a whole other podcast, that topic, isn't it?
Yes.
So why landscapes for you, Josh? I mean, you're obviously recreating places that are important to you and that are part of your world, but also landscapes that are important to other people. And I've seen that you've done a few commissions of places outside of New Zealand and that kind of thing. So, I mean, you have a really big New Zealand flavour to your work, obviously. What have you always been doing that kind of thing when you were painting on the side, or how did you kind of end up making this kind of work, do you think?
I think, I have always painted landscapes. I've never been tempted to paint people, really. But I do think I try and draw the personality out of a place, so that they're less landscapes, more portraits of places.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
I also think growing up, we moved around a lot. I think that we might have lived in maybe 20 houses growing up. And for me, thinking back and how you organise your memories, that's really easy for me to tag my memories and organise them via which house we were at and what the hallway looked like and where the bedrooms were and what the kitchen was like. And naturally, all the associations or things that I was thinking or doing at the time would fall into a nice ordered toolbox. And I have wondered whether that's affected what I do. Certainly the sense of place is incredibly important to me. I'm a real homebod, and I think that without somewhere to call home, I'd be quite lost. I also wonder whether that's something that is inherent in me, that I was going to paint anyway. My great-grandfather was a guy called Sholto Smith, who was quite a well-known Canadian architect here in New Zealand in the 20s and 30s. And he was obviously fascinated by buildings and places, and we've got sketchbooks of his at home, which are all sort of dated 1905, 1909.
How
and
amazing.
They're little sketches of St. Heliers Beach or Kauai, or little buildings that are still there now.
Wow.
One of my favorite buildings of his was the Albany War Memorial Library, that I think must have been built just after the First World War. But it's about the size of most people's kitchen, the
Really?
whole building. I don't think that they thought that there was going to be much need for books in the future. Maybe they were right. It's perfect
Yeah.
for a library now, where it's like, have you got a
Yeah.
wireless connection? Cool. And a place to sit?
Exactly.
Cool. I
Yeah.
can read anything.
I don't think people go to libraries nearly as much as they used to.
No, no.
Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
Yes. So he was all about houses.
It's
And
interesting,
then
isn't it? It must
my
have been in the DNA.
yeah, I often wonder what role we play in, and
Yeah.
that the decisions that we make and the things that we do aren't just based on us making that decision, whether that's something that you're destined to do, or through generations that's what your role is in life. But I guess it's just how you tap on into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you saying something about your grandfather?
Well, my great grandfather was the architect, and then his son, my grandfather, had a demolition company called Smith Demolition, and he had he was a lover of houses as well, but he just loved tearing them down to make way for motorways. So he had the account for like the Northwestern Motorway before they built that. And
Oh,
so
wow.
on one hand, it's like, I would have sort of single-handedly taken out whole suburbs, split
Yeah.
Bond Street in half. And then my parents were both real estate agents, and I don't know, maybe there is a fascination or some sort of something where you just keep going back to the idea of home, or home as being important in one way or another.
Yeah. And then you're also representing home for other people as well. That's quite a strong thread through your paintings.
And that might not necessarily be their home or their house, but home for some people is, that view of the beach, or the dairy, or the place they take their dog.
Right.
Home isn't just four walls.
And
Tūranga
Waiwai.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I mean, how do you find doing those commissions when it's not your place, or maybe it's not a place that you have any connection to? Do you find that more difficult for your painting if it's quite a random view?
It is. It can be. They're certainly a lot easier if I have a personal connection with the place than they just paint themselves. But if they don't, I can just as easily, if someone writes me a brief of what this place means to them and their family, it's really easy to take that and run with it. And also, I think that in a sense, it's easier because you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for somebody else, and it's really easy to go, okay, this is what that person wants and is after. Whereas sometimes if it's just your own work, where could I go? And you can sometimes be overwhelmed by the potential of where you could be going, but also knowing that if I paint this, it means that there's an opportunity cost of another 1,000 paintings that I'm not doing.
Yeah.
So to have a really nice, clear brief, much like in advertising.
Yeah.
Good work in advertising doesn't just happen. It comes from a client saying, this is our problem. This is what's important to us. This is what it needs to have. And we kind of like other ads that look like this.
Yeah.
All those things are really make a creative's job a lot easier.
Yeah. And there's a real synergy, isn't there, between that kind of brief and the kind of brief that you'd get from your clients for a painting.
Yeah, I think so. A good brief is always at the start of it. But I also think that knowing that the end product is going to have a home and it's going to be treasured and looked after is a great feeling. I think ads by nature are very temporary.
That's
and
right.
They're gone. Sometimes people remember them, but usually they don't. Whereas this painting is going to be part of this family's life forevermore.
Yeah, and through generations too.
Yeah, I get commissioned to paint quite a few sort of lovely big villas, lovely big family homes, and I had one recently where I'd gone to do the big reveal which is the exciting bit, taking the canvas over, and it's got a big blanket around it, and people get to see it for the first time. And the daughters of this family, I think, had just been to Te Papa, or they'd been learning about taonga and what it means. And this little girl was just so happy because, Daddy, we've got our own piece of taonga.
Oh, gorgeous.
And to be giving families
it's like
treasures and heirlooms. To me, it's paint on canvas, and I do my best job of making it look as good as possible. But to the people that I'm giving it to, it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And it's about people and history and connection and legacy and all this really lovely stuff that no one ever accused any of our chipheads of being.
But it's such a privilege, isn't it? And, such an amazing thing to be a part of.
Yeah, and I'm humbled every day when I'm asked to paint things for people.
Yeah, that's so nice. So just moving on, because we're breaking my podcast record of length of a podcast, but it's all good because people can listen to it in 2 or 3 parts, and it's totally worth it. So can we just go on to talking a little bit about the commercial side of your
Sure.
art practice? First of all, it's very interesting to me that you don't have a website.
Oh, yes. I tried when I went full time. That was I thought that was like number one thing to do, was get my website sorted, and I went through the process of making one, and then the sort of stops and starts, and all the time being I had a Facebook page and an Instagram page that seemed to be doing all this really hard work for me, that I kept thinking, I guess there are benefits for website, but what are they offering that my Facebook page isn't?
Yeah.
And at that time, Facebook was still quite new, and I don't think anyone knew whether it had any legs to it. But what my Facebook page had, or Instagram page had, was it had a dialogue, and there was space for conversation. There was connections existing already with people who were into my art, who they had friends that might be, and it's doing stuff that a website on its own wouldn't. Website is a great destination. It's a great place to have stuff, but you kind of I wouldn't discount the hard work that social media pages are doing.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it's probably due to what you've experienced in your life and your career. But to have the balls to not actually think I have to have a website, because lots of people have websites, and you're obviously just like, nah, it's not happening. I'm just gonna. I mean, as you say, social media is working so well for you, and you're making so many sales through it and so many connections that why would you?
Yeah, I think that that's really funny, that thing of I should have a website because everybody else does, or that it's, and that sort of scenario is what you're confronted with every day, is people is this what I should be doing because everyone else does?
Yeah.
Which is a recipe for being just like everyone else, I guess. And I'd love to have a website to send people, but I know in my heart that if anyone that was actually interested and they Googled Josh Lancaster, there'd be plenty of options for them to get in touch with me, see my work, but also read and explore discussions and associations, which social media has. The website may not be necessary. And, you can buy pieces through Facebook Shop, I suppose.
But it is a nice sort of, you're kind of putting yourself into a conversation with Josh Lancaster in a way, going into your Instagram and Facebook, and you can see all the past work, which doesn't necessarily happen through a website, which is so much more static, and there's not as much interaction from the artist, I suppose.
But you're unlikely to stumble across a website. A website's like, I wonder if Josh has a website, and then you'd find the website. But really, I think where social media has such power is it gets in front of people so that they're when they're stumbling across things, they're really getting tripped up on purpose by what the algorithms think are good. And and for me as an artist, it's such a great tool. It'd be so much harder without it. But it also, there's sort of some tricky bits to it as well. It does require a lot of admin, I guess. You also, and I think it's great that people can, I can talk to people that are interested in my art, and they can talk to the person that made it. I don't like the idea that you're inaccessible as an artist. I'm people, although they don't ever feature in the paintings, have a huge part to do with my pieces, and also I think requires you to have an awareness of what things are important to people. If you want to sell pictures of them, the ugly tree in the park that you might think is really nice, if no one's ever noticed that tree before, it's not necessarily going to make a good painting.
Well, it probably would still if it was important to you, I imagine.
Do you think I'd do an ugly tree painting just to see?
No, I don't think there's any
see how fast it sells. But you know what? It's if it was just a painting of an ugly tree, I think it would be harder to sell. But if you went and put a little title in the corner that said "The Ugly Tree in the Park," suddenly there's a story there, and all my works have titles on them. And I think as soon as that title goes on, it makes it about people. Nothing on this earth was born with a name in nature. It is what it is. We just came up with names and titles for things so that it makes it easier for us as people. But that title is so important, and it's often not the proper name for a place, but it's what we call it, or what the family commissioning it call it. And again, it's about ownership of a place, and its relationship to you and part of your story, I think.
I was going to say that earlier, actually, that sort of the way that you title a work, which is often in the left-hand corner or sometimes the right-hand corner, isn't it? And you have a white space over your painting behind, and then sort of capital letters in black normally with the place name, which is it's very cool, and it's very sort of you. It's quite a sort of it's something that sort of identifies the painting as your work, and it's quite unusual, I'd say. And it's that sort of use of text is almost part of the overall painting in some ways, and it kind of reminds me of your fascination for branding, and it almost takes you back to the advertising. So it's interesting.
I think that little title caption device might have come from, again, reading comics as a kid, and it was Buster and Whizzer and Chips, all those sort of English ones, and everything was black and white, so again, it was how to tell a story in like a line. But of course they had that little inset caption device that often would be in the top left corner, and it'd say meanwhile at the takeaway bar,
totally,
or meanwhile at home that.
And
you're like, here we are.
You're so right.
And I think that it is just a shortcut to telling people where we are, or explain to people who aren't in the know how important this place is to us. But that little line of the ugly tree at the park, without that title, it's just a tree in the park. With that title, it's the story of some person having a really shitty day and something happening, and that tree's to blame. And then it's got a whole lot more story to it. And
it's interesting though, isn't it? Because you don't like to tell people the story as such. Like, you don't like the idea of the description and the label to go with the painting, but you are actually giving some clues. Without being so explicit, I suppose.
I think it's just sort of there is a bit of this is what this thing is, so there is an element of being prescriptive with what the thing is that you're painting, but just so brief in one or two words. You're not boring someone's head off with what the painting is about.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. And I have been asking people lately on the show how they sign their names. So I'm not sure if I've seen, is your signature on the front?
Yep, my signature is always in the opposite corner to where the title is. So they can just alternate. It doesn't sort of make a difference to me. But I always paint my last name, Lancaster, in capitals in one color. I think for me, I don't know, that's like in art, if people just know you by your last name, maybe that's like means success. I don't know.
It's kind of cool. And it reminds me of those, I'm just looking at your studio or wherever you're sitting, your lounge.
Oh, yes. This is the lounge, yeah. The
lounge, yeah. And you've got, those really cool labels for, is it horse names?
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. Are they reflected?
No, I can see them. I can see them. Yeah. They're the right way.
That was actually, they were a gift from Jamie, who is my lifelong creative partner, who I was telling you about. Jamie is always really good at like having his finger on the pulse of what the coolest thing is, or this little shop that only has some of these that are selling. And he went and bought these for me and explained that they were all horses' names, and they'd been found in a shed out of Ellerslie, all covered in. And so I had to they still smelled of horse poo and horses when I got them, clean all the grass off them. But yeah, they're all hand painted horse names. And again, much like the titles of the work, there's something quite curious and intriguing about a horse's name. The ones there: Head Home, Sovereign's Crest, Count Cian, Jubilee Fair. Like Jubilee Fair just sounds so happy. And but also Sherger's Niece, which I think is spelt incorrectly, and also Sherger's should probably have an apostrophe between R and S. But all those things are quite lovely because it means that it's come from a hand, from a person that had other things on that they were thinking about when they should have been doing this.
Yeah, totally. And that's so it really reminds me of your titles. Do you think you actually got inspired by that, or had you already started?
I think I've probably already started, but there is something inspiring about, or just something curious about a title. It's two words. And I remember somebody reading somewhere that the cat sat on the mat is a sentence. The cat sat on the dog's mat is a story. And just what you can allude to with just one word.
Yeah.
Especially in relation to a painting,
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, that relationship between title and piece is really important. It's not designed to be prescriptive. It's more about the relationship with the person who the piece is special to.
Yeah. And it is quite unusual, I think, for painters to put the title on in such a sort of, not a dominant way, but in a way that, it's there. I mean, it's not sort of camouflaged within your painting.
I'm not hiding it.
It's right there for you.
Yeah, and look, I think that's occasionally I've had feedback from people on that, but they want to go and paint paintings without titles on them, they're free to go and do it.
Exactly. And it's very much your style. I think it's very cool, actually, very modern and funky. You're bringing something else to your work in some ways with that. And you do seem to like text, like with the dairies and that kind of thing. You often got the branding going on.
Yeah, well, I think that's, and dairies in themselves are just such a wonderland for memories growing up of leaving an obstacle course of rusty BMXs outside the front door, so the old ladies have to like clamber over them. Which even when you're getting told off or whacked with a walking stick or whatever, you still just don't care. Like that part of your brain hasn't developed where you care. that much about other people. But so that was one part of going to the dairy, but also just, again, the smells, going into a place and you can smell the newsprint, the magazines, the lollies, you could just everything. And it all makes up a really unique perfume that is unique to that dairy. You know, I remember we used to go to Pawanui a lot when I was really little, and then for some reason didn't go back there for like 10 years or 15 years, and went back and walked into the dairy or the superette, and bang, just confronted with a smell that just within a nanosecond tears you from where you are back to some other time. And you didn't, you'd forgotten about that place until you smelt it again.
Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is just, you know, it's the chewing gum and it's the lollies and it's just everything.
Totally, I can remember that smell too.
And so visually, it's kind of the same as well. You know, you've got all the same ingredients. Everyone's got a bit of Coke branding. Everyone's got the yellow and black and white Herald sign outside, and then there's sometimes some Streets branding, which is a bit scraped off because Tip Top came and took it over, or you know, and you know there was always a trade and exchange sticker on the front door, and some poster with some dates on it, but everything was there. And regardless of what dairy you were at, maybe the door was moved over or this poster was there, but all those ingredients sort of all play into the space.
And into the memories as well.
Yeah. And, you know, memories of a time when going up to the dairy on your bike was the most important part of the day.
And that generation, I mean, that's what we used to do as kids. And I remember that, you know, the local butcher, and how they'd give you some lunch and sausage when your mum would buy the meat for the week kind of thing. And the smell of the butcher shop and the fish shop. And it's crazy. It's so different now, isn't it, really?
It is. And I think that that's just as things get homogenized, that's those sort of smells. And the butcher, you know, the smell of the butcher was, you'd go in and I still remember, I still love it now, even though I know what that smell is now, and it's the smell of death. You know, it's like, hey, we're going to get some yummy meat. This is the exciting bit.
But, you know, I don't like to think about that part too much, to be honest.
But I think that smell as part of the sensory experience is so often overlooked. And I also think people who are sensitive or creative, or if they're sensitive to things, whether that's audio or visuals, smell's a big part of that as well. You know, that you're just open to influence or sensory experiences. And ever since I was a kid, I can, again, with people's houses, some houses you go in and you're like, I love the smell of your mum's house and your mum's cooking. And what is this? Potpourri? Oh, your mum knows how to make this house smell nice. And other houses, I'd be like, knowing that that's like, what is that smell? And then years later, you find that that's what the smell of boiled mint smells like, or what? Do you know what I mean? Like, and it would make places, either as a kid, I'd be drawn to them and not want to leave, or I would want to get out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah,
I didn't really understand it, but but all these things are all sort of linked into memory, and then I guess the easiest way to represent smell or audio sometimes is with a picture. You know, smell's not something that we can really wrap up too easily. And
no, but it definitely, I mean, your work definitely takes people to a place or a time, and with that comes all those other senses, I suppose.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, so we're going to have to get on to our last questions, because it's practically 2 hours. So it's been such an interesting chat, though. I really don't want to cut it short, but I guess I better. So it will be really interesting, Josh, to know who your favourite artist is of all time, if you can choose one, or a few artists, and how have they influenced your work?
So there's a bunch of New Zealand artists that that have always appealed to me. Rita Angus, Dick Frizzell, Colin Wheeler, Don Binney, Carl Morn. These are all people which, I think that I just love the craft that they apply in simplifying these familiar places down to something we can all get. Dick Frizzell is someone that I think is probably throughout my entire life. He's been there talking to me with either his artwork, or before he was a painter, he worked in advertising. And I think for me, he's been a great person to sort of hold up and really interrogate the journey that he's been on, because it's not too similar to my path in terms of geography and advertising, and then going on to paint. So he's always been my all-time New Zealand favourite. And I remember my first ever exhibition at Smythe Gallery in Auckland, sending him a message asking him to come along and check it out. It's like part of my kind of cold calling phase.
Nice.
And I didn't hear back from him, and then he turned up at the exhibition, and
wow.
and I was really humbled by that, and doubly humbled that he stayed and had a good look at the work, and we had a little bit of a chat about it.
That's great.
So those are people who New Zealand artists I'm really into. But my all-time favourite artist is a guy called Lauren Harris, who is a Canadian painter, or was a Canadian painter, and was part of an outfit called the Group of Seven. And I'd never heard of Lauren Harris until my cousin Joel, who's Canadian, said, "Oh, you should check out this guy's work. It's kind of looks like yours." And so I was like, it doesn't look like mine. And Googled him, and I just remember just Google images Lauren Harris, and just scrolling up, and every single painting just stopped me and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. How did you do this? And for something to look so relevant today, even though it's painted 100 and something years ago, that I don't know why, but his work always just connects to me on a really deep level.
Well, we'll put a link to his name, and hopefully there's some place that the link can take us to with his work.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, and it would be interesting. I can't wait to have a look. And as an artist, what would you say is your biggest challenge?
Times there's not enough of it, and it's not in the right places when you need it. But yeah, that's the trickiest one. That, and maintaining healthy relationships with friends and loved ones while being an artist, because it's just such a selfish pursuit. It's just you. If it's going to happen, it's up to you. And if it's going to be, it's just you. You're the one that has to say, right, let's work tonight. No, don't go and have a drink. Or no, you've really got to do this. Come on.
Yeah.
And it does require lots of solo time. I've never been that Bob Ross character who can seem to just happily paint and talk at the same time. It's like, you're not even looking what you're doing.
He's crazy, that guy. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. But he also and I love watching his videos, not from like a technical aspect, but I watch them just think, how can you be so calm and personable and be furiously pursuing your creative ambition?
Yeah.
So the things I struggle with are finding the time and creating a routine. Routines for me are great. When I have my kids, I'm entirely parental, and I don't. Yeah, they never see me paint because it just doesn't happen when
Really?
when when they're here.
Do you paint
But
when they go to bed?
yeah, I do. If usually when I've got the boys, by the time they've gone to bed about 9, and I've made some lunches and got some school uniforms organised and had a tidy up, and then it's like, and I'll just get into some painting, but it's
Yeah.
almost midnight. And for me, I'm not that enthused about just having an hour to paint. For me, magic painting time is I wake up in the morning without my alarm. It's just me here, and I've got nothing in the diary. And so I can just go feral.
Yeah.
And a successful day's painting, I'm still there in my pajama pants and t-shirt at 10 o'clock at night. There's half a dozen coffee cups in the sink, and everything is dirty and smelly and disgusting, but it's been highly productive.
So good.
But it's sort of like one of those things where you just have to go, no, today we're painting, and no matter what happens, you just don't get distracted.
Yeah.
And it is easy to get distracted. I find myself doing things like the other day. We've got quite a lot of work on at the moment, so should be in the studio painting, but I find myself doing weird things like I'd made up some sugar soap and I was starting to clean the skirting boards. Like somehow having a clean top of your skirting boards has leapfrogged all these paintings that you've got to do. And you're like, oh, I did it again. I distracted myself. I should really put the sugar soap away and go back up to the studio. Or I find myself pulling weeds out of the garden. But
maybe it is that
sometimes you do just need to
need the space.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to do some sugar soaping.
Yeah.
Make the paintings better.
Exactly.
Find my own light and shade.
Oh, that's so deep.
Yeah.
And last question, I think we've kind of talked about why you make the kind of work you make, but what would you say to your younger artistic self?
If I was talking to me 20 years ago, I maybe buy heaps of Bitcoin or something. That would have been good advice. But then I would have needed to go into the future and tell myself when to sell it.
Yeah, exactly.
But
was it a thing 20 years ago, Bitcoin?
I think if you got in there as soon as it started, then I think taking anything to get financial stress or work stress is the enemy of creativity, I think. So certainly when I moved to the Hawke's Bay and we sold our house in Auckland, those 20 years in advertising were great because it meant that I didn't have to have such an intimate relationship with the bank that I do now, all of which is great for painting pictures. If there was, I think I'd find it stifling having a looming figure in my head each month that I needed to hit, to give the bank their money or whatever. So I still have dreams of complete financial freedom, because I think what that would equate to for me is complete creative freedom.
Yeah.
I think.
Totally. Yeah.
So with serious advice to a younger self, I think the things that I'd probably say would be, I think I've got to where I wanted to get to. I think that it would have been nicer if I was able to do it more gracefully in parts, if I could have perhaps been a little bit gentler and more patient with myself and the people that I care about. in that journey. And I also, I, I, I don't want to sort of go back and interfere too much with stuff, because you don't want to go back and go, oh, hey, don't worry about anything. Because you know what? I don't know if I would have turned into a full-time painter if my approach was don't worry about anything.
Yeah.
There's a funny dance between not worrying and really worrying about something, to get it done. And I guess that's just a predicament that everyone has, is what to give a shit about and what not to.
Yeah.
And I think if you can figure that out, the world's would be a much simpler
Yeah,
place.
totally. And it's often only in hindsight that you kind of get that,
Yeah.
You sort of get that perspective on your sort of earlier life when you think, you have the advantage of hindsight.
Yeah.
And it's
I think
different.
I think another thing is that I'd probably have really encouraged my younger painter self, the one that was still working in advertising, to have backed myself earlier. I think I left it till when it was inevitable that I was going to go into painting. But if I'd done it earlier, I think it might have been easier on everyone, including myself. But I remember when I first started painting, only Jamie really knew that I was painting. And he did something really lovely for me. And for my birthday, he'd got in touch with Don Binney, and he'd organised for me to have a visit to Don Binney's studio and to take some work in and show him. And Don Binney would give me some feedback. And it's just like amazing.
Yeah.
And such a thoughtful present. But I didn't think that my paintings were good enough. So I was like, oh, better go and start working on those paintings to show Don Binney. And then, a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, I still hadn't got the pieces together. It just wasn't, such a big opportunity going to see Don Binney with my paintings. I better make them look really good. And Don Binney died, and I never got to go and see him. And I felt really guilty that I'd been given this huge opportunity and I'd failed to launch. And that was, but weirdly motivating, in that it's like, right, that was an opportunity, and you stuffed that up because you didn't back yourself. There's nothing wrong with your work. So just sort of little experiences like that do just make, and you realize when to front and show up, even if you're not 100% on it. You got to show up, and you just got to keep things moving, and you can't pull the emergency stop on life.
Yeah, and that it would have been a huge sort of learning experience for you, I guess, and a huge sort of I don't know, just it would have been an interesting insight for you, I suppose, and hopefully you sort of did a little bit of a shift after that experience.
Yeah, I think I think it did just encourage me to just show up and just put myself out there, and to sort of try and give those, feelings of self-doubt or not worthiness,
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, totally, imposter syndrome. Just give them a break, because somebody's got to be an artist, and you're not hurting anyone by painting these pictures. If people don't like them, then that's fine. And maybe the people that don't like them haven't bothered telling me. But, I found it just overwhelming, incredible levels of support from both friends and family and strangers. And it's a bit like, I think, that truth of, when you have to get up at a wedding and make a speech and you're really nervous about it, and you think, no one's going to find this funny, or no one's going to think that this is very smart, or shall I say this, but you've got a captive audience that actually really want you to do well, and there's love and support in that room at speech time. And I think that's the thing that you got to, that for me is quite reassuring, is, you know, I'm supported by the people that matter, and the things that you're often scared of just don't exist.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think you definitely have a very loyal following, and a lot of people love your work, and I do too. And I do think that Don Binney would have loved your work and would have been proud.
Oh, let's hope so. I loved his work, and he was certainly incredibly inspiring to me.
Yeah, I can see that. And he was amazing. Oh, well, Josh, I think I might put this podcast into 2 parts. That would be really exciting. So people have to wait for the second half. Yeah. It's been the best chat. Thank you. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And, you know, you've got so many powerful things to say that we can all learn from, I think. And you're doing incredibly well with your art practice. And it's an honor to meet you. And I really enjoyed my 2-hour session. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mandy. And it was lovely to meet you. And I love what you're doing with Creative Matters and giving a voice to New Zealand artists. I think it's a lovely thing to be doing. So thank you for inviting me to be part of it.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.